ladies and gentlemen of the internet. Welcome to Walking with Beau. Hope you're having a beautiful day. Today is August 12th, 2024. We've got nice dry air today, a nice breeze, mid 70s. It's like a perfect day to walk. So I'm gonna walk. Oh, we got the little guard dog. Hey buddy, hi. How you doing? That dog's a killer. So anyway, this is a daily walking vlog, almost daily. So if you're tuning in for excitement, fun, and watching me dance and entertain you, well, you're going to be disappointed. I walk 5 miles at the least, sometimes 6, sometimes 7, sometimes 8. Been a while since I've walked 8 though. But somewhere around 40 miles a week, 35 to 40. And I talk about whatever I want to talk about, which something on my mind at the moment is usually what I discuss. And politics is something that's important to me, and I talk about them. So if right-leaning politics doesn't apply to you, or you're not a believer in God and the Lord Jesus Christ, you're probably not gonna like my walking vlog. If you're a Democrat, you're probably not gonna like my walking vlog. If you hate guns, you're probably not gonna like my walking vlog. And if you hate Donald Trump, you're probably not gonna like my walking vlog. So it looks like some of the polling that's coming out is just too unbelievable to be anywhere near being realistic. And nothing changes that quickly with a candidate like Kamala Harris and a VP pick that lied about his combat service. They're really taking gaslighting to a new level I've never seen before. And we kind of knew they were going to do that, but I've never seen them do it this openly. It's almost like they're lying so openly and blatantly that it forms a new truth on its own. Because whatever the media and the government says is true becomes the truth. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people still that have their heads in the media's rear end and are allowing themselves to be disenfranchised with information. And granted, there are a lot of people in the country that just don't like Trump. They're sick of the Trump trauma. But I don't really feel like they're going to get behind Kamala Harris. You might have a lot of people switch over to RFK, which is unfortunate. And I just wish people wouldn't vote at all if they feel like that. Because, you know, you're going to vote for RFK because you don't like Trump or you don't like Kamala. So if you vote for RFK, it's going to help Kamala. or it's going to help Trump, depending on what state. So it's like, just don't vote. That's a vote too. Not voting is also a vote. Excuse me. So very good news about tonight. I guess President Trump is going to sit down with Elon Musk and do an interview tonight, streamed on Elon Musk's social media platform. So we'll see what happens with that. It's nice to see. It's nice to see President Trump back on X. That's what it looks like. I still think it's Dan Scavino doing the posting, but President Trump has obviously realized the value of reaching millions more people than he can with his Truth Social, and reluctantly, I'm sure, he has decided to start posting on X again, previously known as Twitter. So and that's a good thing. I think what he's going to do is he's not going to do his personal commentary on X. He's just going to use it as an election account. It's probably going to be Dan Scavino, his internet guru guy, who's going to be doing that. The last post that was made on that account was Trump's mugshot when he was first arrested last year. And so it's a vital tool. He has to use it. The polls are closer than he would like. I will still maintain that Trump is leading, but Kamala Harris has made gains in Michigan and Wisconsin. Wisconsin is still leaning towards Trump, but it's not a blowout by any means, you know what I mean? Trump's not ahead by a lot, and there is a margin of error, usually between 1 and 2 points. So you could argue that Trump and Kamala are tied in all these states. I do think Kamala's vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, is going to get pulled. I think she's going to have to drop him. He's turning into too much controversy. His military record and repeatedly lying about being in combat, veterans don't like that. They just don't. So, and it's not going away. They were hoping they could just ignore it, let the media clean it up. But this past weekend, J.D. Vance interviewing Dana, he did 3 of the major networks weekend shows, and he destroyed that narrative on all 3. I can see why Trump picked him. They had no argument. She even tried to say, well, Trump didn't serve because of bone spurs. And he was like, what does that have to do with lying about being in combat when you weren't? She had no answer for that. Trump had a deferment, you know, and the people that criticize Trump for that also got deferments. As we can see, they cut down a couple of trees right here. So, don't know what the reasoning for that was. There must have been a reason. Couple over here. Well, obviously, I think they're going to be developing something. I don't know what they could be developing. Because if you look at it, those trees weren't in the way. The trees also weren't damaged. So there was nothing wrong with these trees. And they cut down 2 there, 1 here, 1 there, and 1 over there. So obviously they're planning something, and since it was done right here, they might be installing an exit so you can drive through over there and come out over here. That's all I can guess, because I don't see any other reason for doing that. So it looks like they're developing something here. So that's different. So polling. All right, just 2 days ago, literally 2 days ago, Trump and Kamala were pretty darn close. Some of the polls had Trump ahead between 2 and 5 points using the RCP website, Real Clear Politics election tracker, which I recommend. Now, it lists all the polls and it comes up with an average. So when you see Bloomberg go plus 14 for Kamala in Michigan and everybody else is plus 2, plus 1, well, that skewers the average, obviously. So keep that in mind and just use it as a general reference, not as a factual tool. The election right now is close, but it was close with Biden and Trump. In fact, Biden was leading Trump for most of this past year, according to the polls. See, quote, according to the polls, unquote. Right now, we're seeing heavily biased polls. I remained skeptical on that until I went through a couple dozen myself and check the poll tabs, which is time consuming. It really is. You got to bring up the PDF file of the questions that were asked, the answers they got, and the demographics that were asked. It's time consuming, it's tedious, but it's an important thing to do to gauge what's actually going on. So they have Kamala ahead in Michigan by 5 points. Realistically, it is about tied. Trump's leading in Wisconsin by 2, from what I figured out myself, using these polls. Okay, again, I'm using polls. It's all we have to go by. That's why they're important. And they're basically general ballpark. Once you do an average, you can see patterns develop. You can see the same pollsters always oversampling Democrats and undersampling Republicans, or oversampling independent leans. Like, they love their independent stats, but when you look at the poll tabs, you'll notice that sometimes 60 to 65% of the independents polled lean left. So they're not going to support Trump anyway. And you would think that would be a big tilt. So even the ones that are leaning left are thinking about voting Trump. And that's the common sense I'm talking about when you look at these polls. Ignore the noise on the TV and you know, use common sense. Good old-fashioned common sense will rue the day, okay? That's not to say Trump is doing extremely well. He was doing well when Biden was flopping, but I still think they were doing the same thing. They were cluttering up the polls to make Biden look bad so he would step down, and it worked. So now the interesting thing It's a woman in my ear was screaming at me. We just hit a mile. Alert the media. So anyway, it's one of those things where they skewered the polls, and Biden did a talk show this weekend. I don't remember which one. I think it was CBS or something like that. He said that they forced him out. He admitted it right in the interview. Basically said it was a coup. And Nancy Pelosi also said that she didn't believe that the letter that Biden campaign put out was actually written by Biden stepping down and resigning. That's what I was telling you, remember, when I said that Biden was forced out, and they issued that letter and announced it online while he had COVID. And he got on the plane, he didn't have a mask. So I think they announced he had COVID, didn't do any masking, which they usually do, and then you could see him get on the plane, he didn't have a mask on. And then his campaign issued a letter that he was stepping down. So, I mean, 2 + 2 is 4. I would hope that's still the case, and we're not in 1984, the book by Orwell. So it's interesting that Biden says that in that interview the weekend before the convention for the Democrats. And I'm telling you, watch the convention. Now, I'm not saying anything's going to happen, okay? But Biden clearly is upset that he was forced out. Very clearly upset about it. Pelosi is backtracking because she knows Biden's upset with her. And she emphatically said that she never called anybody. She has been accused of orchestrating this with Obama, which is, I'm sure that's what happened. But she went on TV in an interview and denied having anything to do with that, and she did say that the letter looked suspicious. So take that for what you want, okay? That is now officially on record. It has been acknowledged by Pelosi that Biden did not write that or issue that letter. Remember, I said it wasn't on official letterhead. So watch the Democratic convention, either from afar or actually watching it, but keep an eye on what happens at it, okay? I guess is what I'm saying. Maybe nothing will happen. They might even announce a new vice presidential pick for Kamala Harris, because Tim Walz is a flop. He's an anchor. He's hurting their campaign. And Kamala's gotten a lot of flack for stealing Trump's no tax on tips. Biden today issued a statement saying he would support no tax on tips for Kamala. Can you believe that? I can believe that. So I think Trump understands he needs to be on all social media, spreading the word to every nook and cranny, whether he gets censored or not. He's been posting on Facebook for a while, which I still think is Dan Scavino, his net guru guy. It doesn't matter though. Gotta get the word out. So on X today, Trump posted all of his commercials and videos that we've been seeing. Didn't make any personal commentary. One comment just said enjoy, with a picture of Trump and Elon Musk advertising the live stream on X tonight. So you got to use something that reaches millions of people. And you know Trump should be on X when the EU and Europe sent Elon Musk a letter stating that they strongly objected to, basically the way it was worded is, an unsavory criminal like Donald Trump being streamed to European users on the X platform. They want X to censor Trump from European viewers. So couple that with Venezuela personally threatening Elon Musk for helping to spread election lies about the Venezuelan election being stolen on his social media platform. So the UK government is very upset with X also for allowing the riot video content and photographs to be shared with the world about this embarrassment that is going on in the UK with people rioting there. And basically what happened is a 17-year-old with a machete went in and killed 3 children, stabbed them, chopped them, whatever. And the country has had enough of this. Somebody made a social media post which has the UK government upset, that claimed it was an illegal in the country that did it, a Muslim extremist. Turns out that wasn't quite true, but it was somebody that was Muslim. So the white population in the UK has had enough. And what I mean by the white population in the UK is the people that are actually British, which includes Asians, white Africans, Germans, people that have assimilated in the UK. You have blacks and Asians that are UK citizens. Their family's been there for decades. They all have heavy British accents. They're Brits, okay? They're patriots. They love their country. And a handful of white people decided to commit violence. Now that's what happened with the Black Lives Matter protests here, okay? They started out as peaceful protests, which everybody has the right to do. But then you had Antifa show up, wearing masks, smashing windows, setting fires, and assaulting people, and causing violence. They're getting the same thing in the UK right now. The media has decided not to cover it because they feel like they're encouraging it. So if Donald Trump was in the White House, they would be covering it. This is the kind of stuff you get with populism, blah, 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 okay? So the media is not showing it. They're not showing it in Europe. And people are getting their information from social media, which is why they want Elon Musk to shut up and not allow it. And you know Elon Musk, he's pretty much giving them the finger. And the UK has threatened to extradite people, including Americans, okay? They're threatening to extradite Americans for allowing that content or sharing that content. So they're basically saying that if Elon Musk leaves the United States and goes to the UK, they can arrest him and charge him for this. So it does not get any more Orwellian or dystopian than that. They are passing laws in the UK. They're using existing law and twisting it, like the courts did here, to prosecute J6ers who were protesting and give them domestic terrorist charges. So that's what they're doing with UK citizens. I saw this guy, 71 years old white dude, was out screaming about what was going on, and now he's facing 3 years in jail. They arrested him. They arrested people for making Facebook posts, and oddly enough, they have not arrested people for making X posts because X isn't cooperating with their government to give personal information about people that are posting. So my advice to people would be, if you're going to share non-violent content and you're not going to promote violence, UK does have hate speech laws, unfortunately. So I would recommend hiding your IP by using a VPN, whether you have to buy one, pay for one, whatever. I don't know what's illegal in the UK. But you should have your free speech and be able to speak without fear of being arrested if you're not promoting violence. And free speech in the United States is not the free speech they have in Europe. They have hate speech laws in just about every country there. It's unfortunate because, you know, who gets to determine what hate speech is? And we've seen it here. Democrats can go on the campaign trail in a microphone, make a fist and say, fight, fight, fight for your rights. Donald Trump makes a speech and says, fight, fight, fight for your rights. He's inciting violence. So that's the problem with doing that. And that's why the Constitution in the United States does not harbor hate speech. Hate speech in America is free speech. Now, YouTube is a private company. If I said something that they deemed as being hate speech, they have a right to censor and delete my video, which is the other problem. But legally, they have that right. So conversely, Elon Musk has that right to not censor that information because he feels that helps his business, which it does. X has been on fire because you get free speech. You get to say what you want if you live in Brazil, if you live in Venezuela, if you live in the UK and other places where they've stolen your rights. Australians, Canadians, there's a lot of Canadians on X. Because in Canada, you can end up in court for hate speech. So the intelligence agencies have the technology now to monitor what you do online. If they want to see where you're going, what you're doing, what you're downloading, what you're searching for on Google, what websites you've joined, you really can't hide anymore, okay? So that being said, don't do anything illegal on the internet. That's all. Pretty simple. Inciting violence is a crime in the United States. It's a crime in Europe. It should be a crime. Inciting violence is terrible. So the problem is they're abusing it by saying these people organizing peaceful protests on the internet to protest the UK government for being authoritarian are being labeled as domestic terrorists and causing or inciting violence because some violent people did go out and cause damage. So that's the problem with hate speech and laws about inciting violence. It depends solely on the prosecutor's definition of what you were doing. Black Lives Matter goes out and protests. Antifa burns down stores. Nobody gets charged. Black Lives Matter wasn't inciting violence. Now, if it was a Republican group, like a mega group, organizing a protest on Facebook, and then Antifa showed up and burned down stores, all of the people that were mega that organized it would be charged and arrested with inciting violence. And that is the problem we have. It's called lawfare. It's a wonderful weapon for Democrats, liberals, globally. They've been doing that in all these banana republics. Hi. So that's what they've been doing in these countries and banana republics to keep everybody online, because, you know, good neighbor Joe gets charged and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Well, all the other neighbors talk about it and say, geez, I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to have to, you know, borrow against my home to pay for a lawyer. You know, and then you go to prison, you lose your house, you lose everything. So, you know, once you get charged, that's it. Your life's over. And that poor guy out in Montana, you know, was out on a ranch. He went to the J6 protest to see Trump and his speech. He watched. He went to the White Capitol and took a couple of pictures that he posted on the internet. Wasn't involved in anything. He initially got charged with a misdemeanor. I was like, okay, well, I'll just pay a fine, plead guilty. So he pled guilty. And then the DA in Washington, D.C. for the DOJ bucked the charges up to domestic terrorist charges. Then he was facing 30 years for taking 2 pictures. So his solution to that was, he was like 39 years old. He hung himself in his garage, committed suicide. Hi.
How you doing? Wild, huh?
Yeah, they sell for about $2,300 on Amazon. And it looks like it's not running very well. It's making a lot of noise. It's got some damaged blades. And that's the problem with that. Anyway, so authoritarianism, you know, the UK right now, isn't it full of irony that an authoritarian socialist dictator, Adolf Hitler, okay, that's what he was. He was a socialist, kind of a different one, but he was nonetheless an authoritarian. You know, authoritarianism is basically the government enforcing pretty much most facets of your life, right from freedom to whatever else. And they were able to do things like label Jewish shops and run propaganda and media telling people to stop shopping there. They're the problem. They're the cause of all of our problems. They demonize them with media, showing movies in theaters on weekends, short little clips of rats running in an alley, equating them to Jews. And they got an entire country to hate the Jewish people, because if you supported the Jews, they made your life crap in an authoritarian manner. So if you were doing business with Jews and the government found out about it, they would fine your business or tax you or find a loophole in the law to charge you with something. So eventually people just said, you know what, I'm scratching Jews off my list permanently, that's it, I don't need this. Instead of doing what they should have done and stand up for the Jewish people, and they could have ended Hitler pretty early. They didn't, because they were in a police state. So now you have the UK, ironically, doing the same thing Hitler would have done if he had won the Battle of Britain. It's such an insult and a slap in the face for anybody that has died for England, including Americans that fought to help free England and France. And we're talking 70 years later, 80 years, 85 years, whatever the hell it's been later, and Europe is reverting right back to the same mistakes, doing the same stupid things, and getting into the same kind of World War situations they're getting into. So it's really sad. And that's the problem with having too much freedom and liberty. There's always people waiting to pervert it, abuse it for power, and that's what we're seeing. They've lost sight of the prize. Yeah, what's this guy selling? Guess he's not doing signatures or anything, because he would have asked me if I wanted to sign a signature. He's knocking on doors, probably trying to sell something, which is fine. So anyway, authoritarianism is really terrible, and the UK is cracking down on its citizens, and they think this is going to quell the problem. The problem the US citizens have isn't with immigrants. That's what people don't understand. That's what the media is trying to portray it. Okay, the media. They're trying to say that these British citizens are being racist towards immigrants. These citizens are angry with the government for having a two-tiered system facilitating housing for all these people at the expense of UK citizens, raising their taxes and making life very difficult to live in the UK. Not enough rents, not enough housing, and if you say anything about it on the internet, you get arrested. If you tell your neighbor about something, they snitch on you and you get arrested. So people are boiling over because they are rightfully angry with the UK government. The best thing that could happen to the UK government would be for there to be a new government, but I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, so that's what this is all about. It has to do with the UK government, and this is not about racism. The Marxists like to make this about racism because then they have something to focus on. And they always pick one person to make an example of. The biggest leader. In the United States, it was Donald Trump. In the UK, it's Tommy Robinson. He has been very open. He made a name for himself exposing immigrant child trafficking children for sex. He had his own business, was doing pretty well. He spoke up about this, and the UK government ruined him. Killed his business. He's been destroyed, okay? Now, the UK government has said they're going to extradite him, and they're going to charge him on inciting violence, domestic terrorism. They're going to lock him up for the rest of his life. And he's still speaking, okay? Why? because he's hiding out in another country, which they could actually go abduct him and bring him back to the UK, and I'm sure they're looking for him, and I'm telling you right now, they are going to get him, and he knows that. So now he's trying to protect his family because he knows he's already screwed. So he's being a patriot for his country. He's willing to sacrifice his life for his country. And these people out rioting know that, and he's a hero to them. But the more the government cracks down, the more dissent they're going to create, and they don't seem to understand that the UK citizens are upset with their government because of doing things like this. So when they do that, it makes it worse. It appeases the liberals, it appeases the left outrage, and that's what this is all about. Neo-Marxism. So the EU is controlling all of this, because like I said before, none of these countries have their own sovereignty anymore. France is not France, it's a state in the European Union, like the United States. Maine is part of the United States, France is part of the European Union. So you need to think about it that way. Problem is, they don't have really an international Bill of Rights, like a constitution. So each state has their own laws to prosecute citizens with, but they all have to be, basically, has to be approved by the EU. And when they're not, they do everything they can to defeat those, to give the appearance that they still are free. And a lot of these European citizens know that that's the case, but a lot of these people think they're actually free and have liberty. And almost all of the stuff going on in the EU would not fly here legally. A perfect example, an appellate court just overturned Biden's student loan, many parts of it, student loan giveaway, that they're trying for the third time. The other two lost in the courts. They tried to trim it down and squeeze it through with loopholes, and the appellate court just shot down most of it. So that's the difference. In the EU, they would have just done it, you know. So we're in very serious times right now. Pretty much the rest of the world, with a couple of exceptions, has gone the way of socialism. It's a matter of time before they all fall. France is right on the precipice. The UK is actually, you know, some of the people in the UK don't believe they're going to have a civil war, but they're out of touch. They don't understand why people are angry. I understand it because I saw the unfiltered film clips and information about it, people involved in it, people organizing it. And then you get idiots like Piers Morgan, who is a British bloke, talking about how Tommy Robinson is inciting violence. And Tommy Robinson has posted videos stating that, you know, you can't even show me one example of where I did that, because I've never done that. You know, you're part of the problem, Piers Morgan. So there we have that. The UK very much could have civil war. Yeah, and it will be like domestic terrorism, real domestic terrorism, not just the media saying that's what that is. You'll actually have real domestic terrorism, like people with military training bombing cafes and doing terrorist acts, unfortunately. But you know, the citizens aren't going to have any other options. They've been disarmed. They don't have the courts anymore. They don't have any politicians. All the parties in the UK are corrupt. Every single one of them. Conservative, Labor, Liberal. They're all bought and paid for, gone. The people don't have anything to rely on but themselves. They either have to pack up and leave the country if they get permission to, or they'll fight back. That's human nature. And the UK government is not going to be able to silence that without bloodshed. I really hate to say it. I hope it never happens. I never in my lifetime would have thought the UK would be headed in that direction, but here we are. I never thought we'd be seeing openly professed socialists and communists running for president in the United States, but here we are. Bernie Sanders, who used to be a radical, would now be a moderate compared to these people. And Bernie Sanders was gaining momentum in his primary, and the DNC screwed him out of that and opted for Hillary, which was almost good news, because Bernie Sanders was a better candidate than Hillary was. He may have won. So the Democratic Party is not democratic. They're the Communist Party of the United States. Socialists, same thing. I know technically by definition it's not the same, but it's the same thing. One washes the other's hands, okay? So I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. But again, we had freedom and liberty, and it's fostered corruption and lust for power. And at least a third of the Republicans are really horrible. They will go along with it if it ever gets in place. That's it. So that was a patriotic truck. Sure, they're voting for Trump. Democrats, except for the exception once in a while, flying a flag outside their house, generally do not fly USA flags. So anyway, Kamala Harris stealing Trump's no tax on tips, and then Biden verifying that today, saying he would support that. And I'm sure Chuck Schumer's Democrats are going to try to get that in the Senate before the election. Don't know if they'll be able to. And the Republicans, depending on what's in it. Now, this is what Schumer is going to do. We've seen this a million times, okay? We saw it with the border bill that the Democrats, in a bipartisan manner, put together with the Republicans in name only, rhinos, that Trump said we shouldn't support because there's poison pills in it and it doesn't really fix the problem. So, you know what they're going to do with the no tax on tips. They're going to try to get, Schumer is going to try to get it on the Senate floor, because they have the Senate by a couple of seats. And they're going to try to get it to be sent to the Republican-led House before the election. So the Republican-led House will vote against it because the Democrats are going to have something else in it that the Republicans can't support. And that's what they do. They take a talking point that's popular with the public, doesn't matter what it is, border bill, climate, whatever the hell it is, and they'll stick something in there as a part of it, like the Inflation Reduction Act, with all these little things in it that actually increase inflation. But if you don't vote for it, then it looks like at election time that the person you're voting for didn't support lowering inflation. They do that with everything. So The Democrats will introduce that bill, the no tax on tips, but they're going to have a minimum wage increase added with it, okay? Mark my words, because I listen to them talk and I know that's what they'll throw in there, which would hurt the economy. It would hurt businesses, because then it forces them to go from the national $7 and something cents an hour, or whatever it is, 11 something, I don't know what it is anymore, to $15 or $20 an hour. Probably going to be 15. And the Republicans are not going to support that. So the media is going to say, Trump came up with no tax on tips. Kamala Harris took no tax on tips and made it better by raising minimum wage, which affects young people and young voters. And the Republicans didn't support it. And who loses? The young voter. They do this with everything. Instead of doing what's best for the country, they do what's best for them to get more power. And that leads to corruption, which is what we're seeing. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and this is a big one, is it got reported yesterday that Kamala Harris, on a campaigning detail in Massachusetts, yes, that Massachusetts, that Massachusetts, communist state, aka Massachusetts, Secret Service that was entailed to her, Kamala Harris, a couple of rescue workers and a firefighter, I believe, or it might have been law enforcement. There was somebody from the community enforcement. I think it was a paramedic and a firefighter and somebody from law enforcement with the Secret Service agent. There was a hair salon or a nail salon, some kind of salon in Massachusetts. The Secret Service, having nothing to do with Kamala Harris, okay? They're just assigned with her detail because she was in town that day. And apparently, people had to use the bathroom. They didn't have any place to go to the bathroom, okay? Okay. So the Secret Service agent, and they're on video doing it. Indisputable. This is not a conspiracy. This is actually reported by the media. Not very talked about because it's embarrassing to Kamala Harris and the Secret Service, and consequently Joe Biden, because that is his administrative agency that they appoint leadership to. So anyway, she's shown going up to the security camera, a Secret Service agent, female, and taping over the camera. Of a private business having nothing to do with Kamala Harris's visit. It turns out that these people just needed to use the restroom. So they taped over their camera and they illegally picked the lock and broke into the business to use the bathroom. They used the bathroom and then they left. Problem is they got caught on video. So a Secret Service agent broke into a private business, so part of her protective and medical detail for Kamala Harris could use the restroom. That actually happened. The Secret Service has issued an apology to the business, and I think the business is probably going to file a lawsuit, and they should win, because that's a crime. Doesn't matter if you're a law enforcement agency or Secret Service, that's even more responsibility to follow the law, because you swore an oath to the Constitution to uphold the laws of the damn Constitution, did they not? So there's a real problem in the Secret Service with leadership, training, and quality of personnel as we watch by Trump almost being killed. That's why I don't think it was some kind of conspiracy. I don't think they were set up. I just think the Secret Service is corrupt and they're incompetent. They have subpar employees. If you want to blame DEI, go ahead, but this was a woman who taped over the lens. And, well, she's right there on video doing it. You want to say her sex doesn't matter and that the Secret Service hired her because she was a woman rather than her being qualified, which is the point. I'm not knocking women. I'm knocking the government policies of hiring people based on sex and race instead of qualifications for doing the job. Secret Service is a very important organization to protect very important people. So, obviously, there's trouble there. We have an attempted assassination of a former president, and we have agents taping up security cameras so people can use the restroom, of all things. So that agent should be fired, but she won't be because the government union protects everybody. They can't even fire these people once they're hired. So they get fired, they file lawsuits with the union. You know, like Peter Strzok and what's her face there that were texting about screwing Trump over on the campaign trail against Hillary. Finally, they got disciplined for it. They got fired. But it took a long time and they had to file lawsuits. So isn't that completely crazy? You break into you know, like you get an insurance company here. Let's see if that dog's gonna bark. No, he's up on the porch. So, you know, they just break in and use the restroom. Can you believe that? That's insane. That's a crime. They should be prosecuted for breaking and entering, whether they work for the government or not. They broke the law. Had nothing to do with protecting Kamala Harris. That was just a convenient business nearby. She was obviously trained how to break locks, pick locks. So they didn't cause any damage, but they were filmed, they were recorded. So you can see we're just about at rush hour. So I'll go on this little side street. Yep, so we've been seeing RFK signs, a couple of them, a few Trump signs, a couple of anybody but Trumps. Have yet to see any Democrat signage. Nothing. Not a thing. Well, these apples in the trees are starting to turn red. And it's August, mid-August already. Oh, you don't want to run out? I just saved your life, squirrel. That squirrel was going to run right out in front of that truck until he saw me and he skittered back. I spooked him. And probably just saved its life. Coming up on 4 miles shortly. Get home, take a shower, eat some trail mix. Pretty dogs, those huskies. Dog owner had blue hair. You know what that means? It means they're not voting for Trump. I haven't seen my dog out here for a while. Hope he's okay. He or she might be a she dog. It's either a she dog or a he dog. Pretty soon we'll have those decorations out here for Halloween. Well, there is a nice breeze today. I still managed to get a good sweat going, but it's a lot better. So anyway, follow up on the polling. The polling being skewered like that benefits the left, benefits the left's fundraising, creates excitement, exuberance, and you know, but the people that know are being very cautious. David Axelrod is one of them, and David Axelrod is actually affiliated with Obama heavily, and also affiliated with Kamala Harris and her campaign. and they're being cautiously optimistic. But you can tell when you listen to them that they're not believing it either. And because they're in polling, internal polling is not inflated because they don't need to convince anybody. They just want to know what the polls really are. So that's why they do their own polling internally. And coincidentally, the Trump campaign is also doing polling of Kamala Harris. And we get different polling. So that's something that they started doing 15-20 years ago. And you know, it's big business. It's usually done through universities, not the private polling, but the polling we get. So, hi, how are you? So it's one of those things where you got to use common sense, like I said. There's no reason for Kamala Harris to steal no tax on tips unless they had to because they're behind. So and she has to win Pennsylvania. Okay, so she's going to be campaigning in Pennsylvania. Now, if she's, you know, 5 to 7 points ahead in Nevada, like their polling is trying to say, and I don't mean the Kamala Harris campaign polling, I mean the media's polling and reporting of the polling is 5 to 7 points ahead for Kamala. Why did she go campaign there and pick that place to announce no tax on tips when that's where Trump announced no tax on tips in Nevada? Because when Trump announced that in Nevada, he got a boost in the polls in Nevada. Nevada has Las Vegas. Las Vegas has thousands of service workers and they're all taxed on tips. So that's why she announced that there. Las Vegas is the biggest voting center in Nevada. That and Reno. Probably a couple other places too. But you get what I'm saying. That's why it's important that she picked that place, because Trump was winning Nevada. So that's common sense. It's not something you do if you're already winning there. Now, today, she got called out on it pretty much all over the place from what I've seen, where the IRS had announced last year in February that Biden was stepping up tracking tips so the IRS could tax service workers more effectively. And Kamala Harris mentioned in an interview that she supported that. So these people have short memories, or they really think that the media can really cover all of this from everybody for some reason, and I don't think it's going to work. Not this time. We had a pandemic before. People were locked indoors, and which is another one of those reasons that some of these states had lockdown measures all the way up until the election. State of Maine didn't lift the lockdown until May of 2021. So they locked these states down during the election so they could do emergency ballots under the guise of a pandemic. And everybody was, you know, still locked down. Restrictions and all this other stuff in Pennsylvania. So this is all orchestrated, so they're not going to have that this time. But Pennsylvania is going to have mail-out voting. They have changed their policy since the pandemic, but it can't be just millions of ballots going out to free nilly-willy anywhere. like they did for the pandemic, to make sure everybody's vote is counted because of the lockdown. So anyway, as I said on my woods walk yesterday, Pennsylvania has announced that on election night you might not know the results for a few days after. So there you have it. What they should do, and I personally believe this would fix a lot of these problems, is if you're going to have these mass mail-out ballots, you got to have a clear deadline to have them turned in before the election. Before the election happens. They have to be postmarked by election day, not after. All right, so the reason why that would work, my opinion, is that you would get all of the mail-in ballots before the election. They could go ahead and count them ahead of time before the election happens. Because then you can't add to it if it doesn't go your way. I'm sure there's some kind of election laws that might violate in Pennsylvania, but I think that would be something viable and fair. I think electronic voting should be gone everywhere. And really the biggest problem I have with Pennsylvania is you have entire countries count all their ballots and votes on the same night. France, for example, banned mail-in ballots in the 70s because of corruption and cheating. So, I mean, that's not to say they're not doing it with electronic cheating now, but the point being, mail-in ballots are notoriously not reliable, and you're giving outside parties, third parties, access to them. You have these ballot harvesters going out, and handfuls and handfuls of ballots. One person is putting them in the ballot drop-off boxes in Pennsylvania, Georgia, places like that. And I just don't think that should be legal. One person should be able to vote, and they should have to vote in person or mail it with signature verification that is actually checked. So just my opinion. So I'm at 4.5 miles. One hour and 6 minutes, or 16, hour and 16, I think it said in my ear. I wasn't listening to her. She was gonna get mad at me because I wasn't paying attention to her. Alright, be winding down this walk shortly. There's that woman with her dog again. That's all she does. She walks her dog and That's it. I'm gonna cross the street. Tired of talking with her. She always does the same thing. You've seen it on my walks. She pulls the dog aside and tells it to lay down, be a good boy. And the dog's not a mean dog. I think she just likes to have control over the dog. Very strange. It's like she's showing off her control over the dog to me or something. That's what it feels like. I'll wave to her anyways. Hi. Got her country music playing. Country music. So, any hoodly-hoo, we got a car turning here with a dog hanging out. Thanks. That car had a dog hanging out. Looked like a happy dog. Happy, happy dog. Alright, head up the side street up here, say our goodbyes. See if the battery makes it. Well, thank you very much for walking with me today. Hope you have a beautiful week. Don't forget to watch Trump on X tonight, or listen. I think it's going to be an audio live stream. It might be a video one, I'm not sure. And by the way, on Truth Social, they have introduced video streaming using the Apple app, the Apple App Store, or the Android one at the Google Play Store. So you might want to check that out too. If you want real news and real information. Anyway, thank you very much for walking with me. Click like and subscribe. Share the content. It's okie dokie with me. And stay safe out there. Be good to one another. God bless everybody. And take care. Till our next walk, friends. Bye-bye.